Alright guys, today I said I'd do auxiliary stuff, and that's what we're gonna do today. So, auxiliaries is, well, basically anything that isn't your engines or your guns. It's the basic little things you need to have on a ship that will keep it going. So number one, we're gonna look at the steam generator. So a lot like how a steam engine works, where you have to connect up to the boiler, have to have some form of connecting to the magma. You gotta connect that up. Steam generator does the same thing, and this generates electricity. Now, you have to have these with any steam ship, because steam engines do not produce power of their own. They don't put anything into the batteries. Ooh, that's something I forgot. Give me a second. Put that over. And yeah, you need these steam engines. These steam generators, I mean, because the steam generators give you power. Generally, you don't need all that many. Like, they generate a decent amount of power. You can have one per boiler, but only make them like 2 or 3 blocks. That's all you really need in terms of power generation, because you're consuming fuel to feed all of this. So next you go here. This is a fire pump. So fire pumps are relatively simple. You need an engine block connected to, well, any of the type of engine blocks. Same with the steam gen. Connected to a sign that says fire pump. This has to be below the water line. So let me get some glass. It has to be like here or here on water line. It takes water and pumps it into those things right there, which is a hose. This is how you put out fires. Fires can be pretty deadly to a ship if you let them get too big. So it's now on. That's pretty simple. You don't need any type of event out or power coming in. They just can be on their own. You're going to have multiple. You don't have to number them. So with this stuff, you have to number them. No, you don't have to do it with fire pumps. Next, you have a diesel gen. Diesel generator is really useful on steam ships, just having one that's like an auxiliary generator, just in case your steam generators break or boilers break, and you still want to generate power to the ship. You still want to be able to use your lights, everything that takes power on the ship. So these generators are good. Just like the engines, they need a route out. They need to take in air. So they need to be above something, but just like the generator, just like the engines, that is, they can all be connected to one steam shaft and just have this one block if you have multiple. I wouldn't recommend having multiple, especially on a diesel ship. Diesel ships produce their own power with their diesel engines. By the way, here's something I need to correct. This sign is wrong. You just put diesel, and then you put the number of which one it is. Yeah, like that one I did it right. I don't know why I got that other one wrong. And now we're going to go to motors. Motors are a little funky. Motors use electricity to use propulsion. So they're kind of like engines. I mean, they work as engines, but you mainly see these things on subs. They're a lot more useful there. And they get more power if a diesel is running at the same time as them. They work underwater. That's the main purpose of these, is they work underwater. Like your entire ship can be submerged. You don't need to connect it up to any, shaft, and it doesn't have to have a boiler pipe. It just, and it runs off of your power. So like, if you want to make a sub, you're gonna need a lot of batteries. That's where we come over here. This is a battery. This stores power. I think it stores like 10K watts or something like that. Next to that is the hose. You right click on this boy. I think I already showed you this in the introduction, but you right click on it. You can walk around and spray things, higher PSI, more power to it, etc. I mean, there's nothing much else to display. What's behind me is very useful. So this also has to be below water line like the fire pump. And this is a bilge pump. So what this does is, in a certain radius, it pumps out any form of water. And while it won't completely do it sometimes it will run out of charge, you basically can recharge these manually by right-clicking and then right-click again to access it. It's not that hard. Basically, it's just right-clicking it so that it absorbs water. It takes up water, stops flooding. Over here is an anchor, and you might notice that it is a, well, anvil that I placed on iron bars. These work just as you think. You need chain. So, depending on how much chain you have in your ship, this counts as chain. You can, what's the word I'm looking for? You can anchor anywhere, and anchoring just stops you in place, you know, like an anchor does. It hooks down to the bottom of the ocean, and it stops your ship. It keeps it in place. And that the dependency on how far this can go is an anchor chain. For that, you need something called a windlass. So I'll use engine blocks, because I've heard you don't have to use engine blocks, but I usually use engine blocks anyway. You just put a sign called the windlass on it. Like every other engine, the more blocks, the more power it generates, faster your anchor goes. And this is made so you can pull up and release your anchor. And that, you just have to right-click the sign and it'll drop your anchor. Here we have a battery. I already mentioned it. I don't know why I did it anyway. So let's go on to the other stuff I've been talking about. There's only a couple other things. This is a really short one. So we have this right here. This is a wheel. There's two different types of wheels. This does two different things. Like this, it works as a diving plane. Not like, I think it was, okay, so if the front of the ship's here, like this, it works like a diving plane. So this helps your subs dive. That's particularly the purpose of this, is subs diving. And like this, it just acts like a normal wheel. And you can steer the ship. This is always a wheel. This is just a wheel. Make sure it's facing forward. Well, you don't even have to make it face forward if I remember. You can have it facing anyway. This right here is called a telegraph. This is how you dictate your speed. And you can change your speed from full astern to full head. And then you can also go up to flak ahead, which is the fastest you can go, but it consumes a lot more fuel. There's, I think, one more block I have to mention, specifically going over these kind of auxiliary blocks you can put on your ships. It's this ballast tank. What this ballast tank does is it takes in water. So let's say you're on a sub, you need a lot of these. So what these can do is take in water or push it out. The more of these you have on, let's say, a sub, the more water you can take in, the faster you can dive. They're also kind of light. Don't quote me on that one, but if I remember, they're not very heavy. So that's all the auxiliary blocks you'll see that have a function to the ship itself and aren't just supply. So I'll come over here. We're going to do some supply. I'll show you some supply blocks. I'll do this fittingly in the gun area. So there are a couple supply blocks you need to really think about when supplying your ship. So you need fuel. I already mentioned you need fuel. So one block of fuel weighs 1 ton. Gives you 1 ton of fuel. That gets you however much range 1 ton of fuel is going to get you on your certain ship. As you can see, that gives this block right here 2/3, 1/3. That's just how it is. So much fuel. Next, you have different ammos. So let me look up all the ammos, and I'm going to grab them. Alright, so you have this. This is the smallest block of ammo. It works for both 20mm guns, 40mm guns, and yeah, it just works for 20mm and 40mm. This has, if I remember correctly, about 20 things of ammo per block, which for AA guns is a lot more because they shoot multiple rounds, so it's kind of like a bag of ammo. Here's a light. This light block works for 3 to 5-inch guns and has a 10 ammo capacity. So this counts as 10 blocks, not 10 blocks, but 10 rounds of ammo. Medium, right here, this counts as 8, and it works from 6 to 9-inch. It counts as 8 ammo. Now you get into something a little funky when you get into here. So for anything above 9-inch, you need 2 different types of ammo. You need this guy, which is a heavy shell. It's a 10 to 18-inch shell. And it gives you 4 ammo. But you must use with powder. And this powder also provides 4 powder. So combined, these are 4 ammo. And the reason you need these 2 separate blocks is because of how ammo is stored. So essentially, this gives you a bag of powder, and how a gun works is you throw a bag of powder behind a shell. Especially with these bigger shells, you're going to see powder bags. In the case of medium, if you haven't noticed how it's textured, the powder comes with the gun, so the shell, so it doesn't really matter. But this, you need 2 separate blocks. Now, for now, if I remember, powder doesn't work right now, but you'd still need to store both. It's pretty important to have both on your ship. These will be very useful if you have heavy guns. And heavy guns aren't super common. You shouldn't use them on like every ship you can. Use them where they go. Because having a heavy gun does actually act as a detriment to certain things. Like a cruiser, let's say 11s, like the Deutschland class, they have those. Those don't have great rate of fire. If you're in another battle with a cruiser, you want decent rate of fire as well as with your ship penetration. 8-inch guns do the best of that, but the Deutschlands also compensate by using 6-inch guns with them as well, so they're a little more scot-free. But the point is, these do not really go well on a cruiser. They weigh a lot. The guns themselves are hugely expensive and weigh a ton. Not a literal ton, by the way. I know I've been talking about literal tons recently, but they weigh a lot. You don't want to use them on everything. People constantly like to upgrade ships, but how helpful is it really in the long end? I mean, the 8-inch gun is going to do. Then use the 8-inch gun. It's lighter, has a better rate of fire, and you can have more of them if you need them. There's not really too many other blocks to go over. Next, I think the next thing I want to do is go over the equipment signs. That will be next video. This one was just short because there wasn't too much to talk about. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. This will, of course, get added to the playlist. I'll post it somewhere. And I'll see you tomorrow. Then I won't see you again because I'm taking a break for 2 days. Alright.